The only time I can remember having sleep paralysis was a few years ago. It's dawned on me that it could be linked to something more real than I thought, which used to happen in our house. I remember one night when I was younger, maybe 11, 12 years old, waking up late at night to hear someone coming up the stairs in my house, which was a common thing with my father coming back from work late at night. Outside my door is the top of our staircase. You can't really see the actual stairs, but you can see the banisters and landing outside my door with a little window. I remember looking over to see who was outside, thinking it's my father, but instead being met with an all-black humanoid figure with zero features of any kind. It slowly crept to the top of the stairs, stopping at the top and turning to face me and just standing there, motionless. I remember the instant feeling of panic and sheer dread when I saw it. I didn't want to move or even pull the covers over my face, but when I did try to move, I couldn't do anything but move my head left to right. I didn't make a solitary sound. I just stared at the figure as this dark and ominous noise got louder and louder. Imagine a really low droning noise that sounds like a bad cassette, but almost deafeningly loud. Very similar to the Enderman sound when it's chasing you in Minecraft. Absolutely terrified, I tried to shout out to my mom, who was in the room next door, but nothing but breath came out. I forced as hard as I could to make a single sound, but all I could manage was a raspy squeak. As I did, the black figure lunged and started to run full pelt towards me. I closed my eyes out of instinctual reaction, and when I opened them, it had gone. I held my vision at the landing outside my door for a moment, but as I brought my head back to look at the ceiling, I could see this figure out of the corner of my vision just lying over top of me, looking up at me like a cat squatted down ready to pounce. I remember I could not physically do anything but cry in absolute fear of this thing. I didn't even breathe. I just laid there motionless in the hopes this thing would leave. Next thing I know, I get this unparalleled urge to get the hell out of my bed, so I jump out as fast as I could. I take a second to get my bearing, but at that point I was covered in cold sweats with tears down my face, barely catching my breath. I checked the room over and reluctantly peered out of my door, but there was nothing. Nothing in my room, no sign of anything happening apart from being drenched in sweat and face wet with tears. Fast forward a good few years, I'm telling this same story to my mom and sister, and bad dreams came up in the conversation. I told them both this same story and they had a real shocked look on their face. Turns out when I was really young, they used to hear what they originally thought was my father or each other walking up and down the stairs late at night, way past my bedtime back then. They heard someone or something walking up and down the stairs along the landing, and then it would stop. They never told me, as I was quite young when it happened and did not want to scare me, but they had zero idea I had this experience. On top of that, there have been times where my sister would come home after a night out drinking with friends and she had seen a dark figure around the house, specifically on the stairs, but she always blamed that on the alcohol for the first few times. But she started to see it more and more until this figure seemed to disappear completely. It certainly spooked me when they all told me their experiences, but I have had nothing out of the ordinary happen to me since. So I don't really know what just happened, and I'm not 100% sure if it was truly sleep paralysis because all the experiences I have heard of weren't like what I just experienced, so I don't know. I remember dreaming about driving down a nearby road when I saw a person standing in the middle of the road and I freaked out and swerved away. I was then brought back to my bedroom in bed and I was lying down. It didn't feel like I was still dreaming, but I couldn't move, and so I thought it was just another part of my dream, but it felt off. I then realized it was my actual bedroom. I could see the faint light of sunrise through the window and I could see our dog at the end of the bed, and I knew my wife was right next to me, awake scrolling through her phone. Then it happened. I started to hear what sounded like cracking, wheezing, scraping and growling, and I could feel that something was coming for me. It was down near the floor, out of view from where I was lying. I could hear it like you'd hear a dog come walking around the bed on the floor, but it was slow and I knew it was coming for me. The sounds were getting closer. I tried to move but I couldn't. I tried to get up but I couldn't. Each second I could hear it clawing at the floor, making these dark, horrible sounds, and I wanted absolutely absolutely nothing to do with it. I tried to yell for help, but I just could not do it. That's when I noticed I still had control of my breathing. So I just started hyperventilating to get my wife's attention, and it worked. She reached over and was able to wake me up. When I told her about what had happened, she told me she didn't see or hear anything in the room until I started hyperventilating. I don't know what that was, or if it was really sleep paralysis, but yeah, I did not like that. I have experienced sleep paralysis a ton of times since I was really young, like 5 or 6 years old, and I have had some scary experiences. I would say 99% of the time it was just the normal stuff though, like not being able to move and waiting for it to end. That last 1% is crazy though. When I say some experiences were crazy or scary, I actually mean absolutely horrifying, to the point I could not sleep for days after. 2 instances stick out in my head the most, and I will never forget them. The first was 9 years ago when I was a senior in high school. I lived with my sister, who was a corrections officer, and I would watch my nephew while she did her overnight shifts. One night I decided to sleep in her room since she had the comfier bed and I wasn't really sleeping well in our guest room bed. I remember waking up in complete darkness, unable to move. It seemed like the usual, so I closed my eyes thinking I would just fall back asleep. That is, until I heard what sounded like heavy breathing coming from the direction of the bedroom door. I thought it could have been my sister getting off early from work, so I tried to fake sleep, thinking maybe she would just take the guest bed seeing I was knocked out. But then the sound of the breathing started moving around the bed like it was pacing. I could hear the floor creaking at certain points as it was going back and forth from one side to the other. The breathing got heavier and deeper, like it was a large male that it was coming from. I became nervous, since I was still unable to move and my nephew was in the room across the hall. I had no idea whether he was okay and genuinely felt like I was going to die right there. I could feel my body getting hotter and hotter as the breathing started moving quicker and quicker around the bed. Then I started to feel what felt like large hands wrapping around my neck. I wasn't being choked, but rather it was the feeling of somebody placing their hands around your neck, showing me they could choke me out if they really wanted to. After what felt like forever, my body was jerked from one side of my bed to the other, and I was able to sit up. I was covered with sweat, and after realizing I could move, I immediately ran to my nephew's room to check on him. He was sound asleep. I could not sleep after that though, and actually refused to sleep there at night. I would force myself to stay up for the rest of my time there until I moved 5 months later for college. I would sleep in the nurse's office at school or go to a friend's house during the day and take a nap so staying up would not be so hard at night. I just felt unsafe. The next incident happened quite recently, actually about 3 weeks ago. I woke up into sleep paralysis while napping for work. It was completely normal for the most part. I was laying on my side facing outwards on the bed and I could feel my girlfriend was laying next to me. She knows how much I experience sleep paralysis, so she knows that if I start shaking or trying to yell, to just shake me awake. So naturally, I started to try calling for her so she could wake up and then wake me up completely. I felt her shake me, but I wasn't snapping out of it. I kept calling for her while trying to say, "Turn me over." I felt her reach her hand underneath my side, laying on the bed, and grab the area under my armpit, wiggle her fingers into place, and then squeezed me with a bunch of force to the point it actually hurt and I snapped out of it. I rolled over to ask her why she squeezed me so hard, only to see that there was nobody there. I was confused and honestly shook. To make things worse, my girlfriend opened the bedroom door asking if I'm okay because she heard me calling for her but was washing the dishes. She said she heard me call for her and began to walk toward the room, but then she heard me walking around the room and she figured I was okay. I never got out of the bed though. I have no idea who or what threatened my life or shook and grabbed me on my side, and there was no markings on my body after the events, but I promised that the feeling of dread and the feeling of being grabbed were definitely real. So let me just say that I have not experienced anything remotely close to sleep paralysis. Does it have to do something with the fact that I'm Christian? Judge for yourselves. The only story I have happened a few years ago when it was a school day, and for context, my mom used to wake me up on school days at 7 a.m. And my mom wakes me up usually by just coming into my room and shaking me by the shoulder. And sometimes I get frustrated because I was having a good sleep and I turn around quickly to the other side to wake up faster. So this one time I was sleeping and I felt like someone was trying to wake me up by shaking me by the shoulder, and I thought it was my mom, so I turned around quickly, and to my surprise, no one was there. And I checked the clock and it was 5 a.m, so it could not have been my mom. So I just went back to sleep. What else could I have done? I don't know. Sleep paralysis occurs to people in different ways, but the overall experience is the same. You wake up in the middle of the night and you feel an unwelcoming presence. You open your eyes and you see some dark figure and maybe hear some sounds, and then out of fear you try to scream or move, but you can't. Then some seconds pass by that feels like a long time and you wake up fully. Actually, in most instances, people don't see anything, they are just unable to move. Rarer are those instances where people actually see dark figure of some sort, but those are confirmed to be hallucinations and they are harmless. They might feel real, but they're not. And the reason you can't move is because your body isn't fully awake. Your mind is though. There are groups of people that have a higher chance of getting sleep paralysis. Those are people with insomnia, narcolepsy, anxiety disorders, major depression, bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. Also, people with no sleep pattern are more likely to get an episode. And what seemed also intriguing is that sleeping on your back also increases the chances of having sleep paralysis. And some people during sleep paralysis experience hypnagogic hallucinations, aka those shadow figures. But not only that, these types of hallucinations can also replicate smell, sound, taste and feelings. If you are partially awake during the rapid eye movement stage of sleep, you may have hallucinations. You are gazing at the actual world while also dreaming, which is the ideal combination for seeing things that aren't there. That's the medical explanation, and these three stories stood out to me because of their paranormal vibe, and they seemed different from normal sleep paralysis stories. But it's nothing more than sleep paralysis mixed with hallucinations, at least theoretically. But it is crazy to think that brain can replicate something that seems so real at that moment. What can I say? Life does not cease to surprise. So stay safe and God bless.